Hello, everybody. This is Todd Nelson. I am with Edward Jones, and we're glad that you joined this webinar because what we're trying to do today is to give you the information that is so hard to find when you're looking to buy a house. There's a lot of information on TikTok. We all know, and we scroll through Facebook and Instagram, and there's all kinds of folks saying, if you'll pay me $89.99 and subscribe to my channel, you'll get all this information. We here on this Zoom call are big believers that the more we can educate you're going to have a better experience overall. And so today we want to have a conversation where we have brought several what we call subject matter experts, several people together in the various areas that you might need when you're looking to buy a house. And we want you to have the ability, if you don't get a question answered on this call, we want you to have the ability to reach out to these folks because they are experts in their field. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name's Todd Nelson, and I'm going to be the host here. And so today we're going to start with Josh Kile. He's with Onward Realty, and he's based here in the Nashville area, but I know a lot of us, we can do business in other areas outside of Nashville. So Josh, I know you've been a longtime realtor, lots of things going on as we're recording in the market. What do we, as a new home buyer or seller, what do we need to know when it comes to buying a home right now?
Yeah, so we can start really just from a first-time home buyer standpoint. Of course, I work with the gamut of buyers. My clients, range from first-time home buyers all the way to folks that are looking to make investments in investment property and vacation homes. But there are several things I would tell you as a home buyer. There are a lot of folks out there right now that are timid about the process. And about really the landscape of our market. And what I would tell you is there historically, our rates have been around 7%. For the last 75 years, rates have been around 75%. What you need to know is that if you're not investing now, if you're not purchasing now, you're never going to benefit, from all of the upside of owning real estate. So I would say there's a lot to take into consideration in terms of the financial investment, but the longer you wait, the less you get the benefit. So some headlines folks are seeing right now are that there are more inventory in the history of our real estate market than there are buyers. I think there are 500,000 more homes for sale than there are home buyers in the market. So I think this is a direct benefit to anyone looking to purchase right now, whether it's a first-time home buyer or whether it's someone that's looking to upsize or downsize. So that's something to consider too. Again, we kind of go back to rates, but I really feel that there are sellers that are going to probably bend the knee a little bit for buyers. So that's important to note too. When I work with a client, the first thing I like to do is sit down in my office in Cool Springs over in Franklin and talk about your goals. Talk about your why you're buying a home. Are you a first-time home buyer? Are you an investor? What type of product are you looking for? Are you looking to grow a family? I like to talk about your goals. And after we talk about those goals, the single most important thing you can do as a home buyer, if you're not paying with cash, is to get pre-approved by a lender. Because once we start there, we have a solid foundation to work on financially. Heather, who's going to talk here in a minute, will give you an idea of what that looks like. But that's number one for me. And once we get past that point, and we have a kind of a price ceiling to work with, we go into the search setup. I will send you a buyer representation agreement that basically hires me as your designated agent. And from there, you get white glove service. So we get to talk about all the fun things after that and go look at homes. And, I think that's probably the most fun part. That's what everyone's watching on HGTV is home hunters. So that's the fun part of what I do. Um, After that, we kind of start to establish the 80-20 rule, which is I like to revert back to that. If my buyers can give me a list of non-negotiables, wants and needs, and if we can hit 80% of those, I think we found probably a great contender for a home. So, and we can talk about the purchase all the way from the front to the beginning, but there are a few things that I just want to make a point because I know we're limited on time. You absolutely, during the home purchase process, you want to get an inspection. No one, regardless of how long you've been purchasing houses, is a professional home inspector. No one's a general contractor. You don't know the ins and outs of a house. That's the single most important thing you can do when you're purchasing a home. And I say that because it becomes another negotiation piece throughout the transaction process. It's really the second negotiation. You're going to negotiate the price of the home on the front end, and then you're going to find out if that home is as sound as the sellers say it is. And if we find some things that aren't so kosher, we can start to negotiate money in lieu of repairs. Another thing that I want to kind of really hammer home is the importance of title insurance. Leslie's going to talk about the importance of that in a minute, but yeah, title insurance is important. We want to make sure that you're actually getting the home that is being advertised. And lastly, guys, I will preach about this, from the beginning of my transaction, from meeting you to the very end, is just being a good buyer. A great real estate transaction has a zero-sum rule. If the buyers and the sellers feel good at the end of the day, then you know that the transaction has gone well. So, that's in a nutshell, in a 5-minute nutshell. Those are a few things I want to convey to folks that are thinking about the purchase and want to know a little bit more about the Middle Tennessee home search and purchase process. But again, my name is Josh Kile. I'm with Onward Real Estate. Been doing this for about 9 years. This is my full-time job, and I sincerely enjoy it. And I think that working with me and the rest of the folks on this call, you'll be doing yourself a big favor.
Yeah, Josh, thanks so much. I know there's all kinds of stuff going on with commission structure changes and lots of questions, but what you just covered were things that you don't get on a TikTok video because nobody talks about title insurance or home inspections and all that stuff. And so our whole goal is in these 30 minutes, because everybody has 5 minutes, is to give you the information that you need. So perfect job. Thank you. And so with that, once you decide on a home, pre-approval and some of those things, we've brought on Heather Wilson with Churchill Mortgage. Heather, what do buyers and sellers need to know about the mortgage process, especially right now as we're recording?
Sure. Yeah. So, one of the things I love about what I get to do every day, I help people invest in an appreciating asset. Your home is going to be one of the best investments that you could make is in a home. And really, what you want to do first is I talk with a lot of clients who, we're looking at a certain purchase price, but really what you want to look at is it's different what you can afford on paper than what you actually want to, potentially spend every month in your mortgage. That's really important. That's what we're going to talk about up front, because those numbers can look very, very different. So we're going to look at your whole picture. Obviously, when we're looking at pre-approving you for a mortgage, we're going to look at your income as it relates to the purchase price of the home, the monthly payment of the home, and then your credit liabilities. So what that's going to look like is that's going to be car payments, student loans, credit cards, things like that.
Right.
That's how we really get to that. Okay, here's your debt to income. Here's what you can afford. But realistically, what are your goals? Where do you want to be? Do you see this home as a forever home? Do you see this home as, hey, this is our starter home. We're going to move up, maybe into a forever home in the next 5 to 10 years. That's important for me to know up front what your goals are. And with those goals, they're first time home buyers. I know Josh kind of mentioned that. First time home buyers, there are a number of programs to kind of help get you there, right? Saving up money sometimes to buy your first home is not always the easiest. So there are programs out there that can help with down payment assistance. There are some no down payment options too. So just know that, if you think I can't do this right now, it's always good to have a conversation to see if, yeah, maybe you can, or if you can't right now, let's kind of put you on the path, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year. We can look at what that looks like and help get you there. So really the two main loan types that you're going to be looking at, whether you're a first time home buyer or a 10th time home buyer, you're really looking at conventional and FHA. Conventional is for, you can look at, if you're a first time home buyer with a conventional loan, 3% down. Minimum down payment, if you're not a first-time home buyer, is 5% down. A misconception out there is you have to have a full 20% down. You do not. You can purchase a home with a conventional loan as little as 3 to 5% down. This is for home buyers who, credit scores in the 700s, have some good healthy credit, has some good credit usage, couple active trade lines open. And this is a conventional loan is always the best way to go if you can. Now let's talk about FHA really quickly. FHA gets thrown out there a lot for first-time home buyers. It is a good loan program, but you don't technically have to be a first-time home buyer to get an FHA loan. FHA loan is as little as 3.5% down. And it's for individuals who maybe have some potentially derogatory credit, medical collections, maybe a bankruptcy, something like that. But also it does help first-time home buyers because I personally purchased my first home right after I graduated college. And how I did that was through an FHA loan because I didn't have a ton of credit usage. I didn't have years and years of credit usage. So while my credit score was okay, my credit usage wasn't, there wasn't a lot to look at. So I purchased my first home, FHA, 3.5% down. And I am now able to use that as an income. I still have it as an income producing property for my family. So, it's, if you can purchase a home, there are definitely ways to do it. There's also VA loan if you're a veteran. There is a USDA loan if you're looking for a home that's maybe in a more rural area. Both of those loans require 0 down payment. So there are definitely options out there that can help, purchase a home if you don't have the full 20% down and as little as, 0 to 5% down. So, and the process really is, like I said, we'll have our first initial conversation. Really, what are your goals? What are your needs? What are your wants? And then we'll go from there. We'll start calculating. I'll look at credit, collect some income, asset documentation. And then at that point, if everything looks good, you're pre-approved, I then send you out back to your realtor, who is going to kind of be boots on the ground, back to Josh, hopefully, who's going to be boots on the ground with you and really, getting into the nitty gritty. And then once you're officially under contract, like Josh said, while we don't require a home inspection, I would never purchase a home without a home inspection. I would always recommend a home inspection. If you're getting a mortgage, you're likely going to be getting an appraisal as well. So with an appraisal, a home inspection is going to look a lot deeper into a home than an appraisal would. So I would always recommend a home inspection to kind of just help bolster your appraisal. And just so when you're purchasing that home, I mean, you're really purchasing something that is going to hold the value, is going to appreciate, and is really, just has some good bones to it.
Right. Right. And Heather, I know that there's a lot that you just covered there. And one thing that I picked up on is that you passed the ball back to Josh. And I just found out some information that, like, folks in New York, a lot of folks are moving to Tennessee. Folks in New York, how they buy a home, completely different. Everything runs through their closing attorney. Down here, most everything, especially if you have a good realtor like Josh, everything's going to be quarterbacked by him. And so if you're moving in from out of state, just realize that every state's going to, the home buying process is going to look a little bit different. And so with that, once you've locked in kind of a mortgage, got pre-approved, some of those things, either your realtor is going to suggest somebody, or we have somebody like Leslie Hayes with Magnolia Title. She is a real estate attorney. And so Leslie, talk to us about what does that look like? Why is it important why is the closing the title of the company? Why is that such an important part of the process?
Sure. Well, so I'm with Magnolia Title and Escrow. And so as you hear in the name of our company, even we kind of play two roles in the transaction in Tennessee. So we're doing title and escrow. So on the title piece, your title company, hopefully Magnolia, is pulling a title search for the property. So once Heather and Josh have worked together and we have a contract, we take that contract in and we'll open the file on Magnolia's side and we order the title search. So that title search is going to research the property to see what liens are against the property. Is the seller the actual owner of the property? Surprisingly, sometimes that's not the case. And then just see what all is kind of going on with the property, because our job at the end of the day is to make sure that you as a buyer receive a home that doesn't have any liens on it that you're not expecting to be there. So like if you were doing your mortgage with Heather, once you close, you should have one mortgage against the property and that's it. So that's our goal, is to get you through the legal part of the transaction to where when you receive the deed to the property, that mortgage is your only lien against the property, and also that all the right people signed the deed to you to make that transfer legal. So we as the title company kind of little bit of a ringleader for the transaction. I think sometimes like we're kind of talking to everybody. So one thing Todd mentioned, like a difference between New York and especially Middle Tennessee, is that buyers and sellers can close with different title companies. So you may have two title companies actually involved in the transaction. So that is a big difference that you'll see if you're coming from out of state sometimes. So we communicate with that other title company. We're communicating with your lender. We're communicating with your realtor. We're communicating and ordering mortgage payoffs if we need to for the sale side, ordering HOA statements of account so that we can get all those fees collected at closing. So we're kind of pulling data from multiple places to make the transaction happen. So I usually like to say we're looking at the contract, so like all addendums, anything financial related, our title work that tells us whether taxes are due, mortgages are due, things like that, pulling lenders' fees onto the closing statement, and then also, I think I mentioned title already, but that's kind of the second part of our process, right? I mentioned title and escrow. So the escrow piece, we're taking in every penny that's owed for that transaction from the buy side, and then also dispersing every penny on that transaction to the parties that it's intended to go to. So what we often will have buyers round up on what they owe us for closing. Like let's say they owe us $12,550. They'll maybe send us $12,600. And so I have to give them that $50 back. I can't just keep it or do whatever with it. We have to send out every penny that comes in too. So we are a fiduciary for the transaction through our role as an escrow agent. So again, kind of pulling data from multiple places, handling those funds in a fiduciary capacity for the buyer and the seller, and then also making sure that the transfer to you as the buyer is legal and that you can rest peacefully at night knowing that nobody's going to knock on your door saying that they were owed money at closing and they didn't get paid, or it could be from two owners ago. So we issue you an actual insurance policy after closing that is giving you that insurance coverage that you sometimes the seller pays for here. I think it kind of goes back and forth on how the market is, but we're seeing some sellers pay for it right now because like Josh mentioned, there are more houses for sale than there are buyers. So sellers are kind of paying a little bit right now the way the market's going. But yeah, so that's what we're doing here, is making sure that everything is correct and you own your property when it's all said and done.
Well, and Leslie, I know, so as a side note, my son just bought a property last year, and
Yep.
Heather and Leslie helped in that whole transaction. So it was a very seamless transaction. But I know one of the big things for my clients is because of the amount of fraud, wire fraud and all that
Yep.
stuff going on. I know you all are really big on making sure that the funds actually get there. There's a lot of procedures in place, which is very, very reassuring, because a lot of times this is the biggest purchase that anybody's going to make in their life, is their
Exactly.
home. And so I
Yeah,
really,
as a buyer, I think it's important for you to know a lot of times it looks like the title company's email could get
Mm-hmm.
hacked. So like when you start a real estate transaction, you're receiving documents through email, contract documents to sign, communication from your agent or your lender a lot of the time. So what we've found is that a lot of times if you're using Gmail especially, it's pretty susceptible. Your email, people are hacking email and are just watching for that language, watching to see if you are potentially entering into a real estate transaction. And if they hit your email at the right time and they see some emails like that, they start watching. And so they'll see somebody from our office email you eventually. So they'll steal like our little signature from our email. So one thing we advise buyers on when we open a file is go ahead and change your password to your email address, just extra security measure, maybe change it a couple of times during the transaction just to kick out anybody who may have kind of compromised your email address. And then also for us as a company, we send you instructions close to closing once they're requested. So we're not just shooting out wire instructions randomly to you as a buyer. And then we also have the last few digits of our wire instructions missing. That just causes you to take a pause and call our office to obtain the last few digits. I know like for some people that's a frustration, but the frustration has a big goal in mind of just taking the time to pause, because a lot of times with wire fraud, the person who's supposed to be sending the wire may feel like the emails are telling them, hurry, hurry, you have to do this today or else you won't be able to close on the house. And so it's just good to kind of take a pause, even if that costs you 20 minutes on closing day, of making sure that your wire goes to the right place.
Yeah, I guarantee that 20 minutes is worth the 300,000 or whatever that you're wiring.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's great. So now what we want to talk about is, now that we're kind of getting into the place where you bought a house, you're waiting for it to close. This is where my wife and I bought several houses, investment properties, those kinds of things. This is where it can really start to create stress on everybody, because all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, what about that home inspection? Oh, who do I get for the repairs? If you're on the seller side and you've got a punch list and some of that. So that's why we brought on Leslie Murray. She's with Let Us Do It Home Services. She kind of works with realtors and buyers and sellers when it comes to that punch list before and after selling a home. So Leslie, tell us a little bit about what that looks like in the home buying process.
Absolutely. So with my company, we have several things that we can do. Now, the first part is we have a pre-listing. Sometimes there are sellers that the agent will come look around, and they'll kind of give them a list of, hey, if we can paint that wall, or we, can do this or do that, we clean it up, make it look nice. We can maybe get a little bit more money, or just make it presentable, because the whole idea is you want the buyer to come in and kind of imagine themselves in the house. So if there's too much going on, then the agent might reference, hey, this needs to be done. And so the seller might actually call us, or the listing agent will give our name. And then I usually go out and I meet with the person, and we go over the list, and I try to get it done within the timeline, knowing that they're trying to get the house on the market, right? So I try to be I know that there's timelines involved in most of some of the things that we do. So I always try to be very wary of that, to make sure that my agents are taken care of, and that, we're not going to be an issue in this process. So we do the pre-listings, and I know in some states, actually, sellers will get a home inspection ahead of time, and they can fix this stuff. Now, I know it's not here in Tennessee, but I think my mom had it in Missouri, where she could get like you were saying, coming from New York, where the seller would get it, they fix everything, and then the buyer wouldn't necessarily get it. And I do not recommend that here in Tennessee at all, because I'm on the same page as everybody. You definitely need to go home inspection. And even if the seller has one, I still think the buyer needs to, because you need to make sure that your house you're going to move into. So the second thing the main important thing that we do on the real estate side is we do take that list from the home inspection. So the home inspector goes out, and they find maybe a few things, maybe a lot of things. And usually on the inspection, it'll have a bunch of pictures. And then at the end of it will kind of be a summary. Hey, here's electrical, here's plumbing, so that I can go in, I can kind of go to the last page, I can kind of look at the pictures, and I give a bid on everything. So usually the agent, like Josh, would send me the home inspection. and he would say, hey, do it all, do 5 and 7, do whatever. And I will go in and I will look at it, and then I will give him a bid for everything. Some of the things, we are like the HVAC, if there's anything with that, we have a person and we can help out with that as well too. So we can pretty much, so it's kind of just one bid, and Josh can take that. And as he said before, he can use that as, hey, it's going to be $3,000. So maybe we negotiate that. My recommendation though to buyers out there is, yes, you can negotiate it and you might get your money back, but when you buy the house and that comes up, you really need to get those things done at some point. There's a reason why there's an issue, and usually it's a lot of wood rot, a lot of water damage, and if you don't get those things done right, I'm not saying, I know you put a lot of money up front, and sometimes right when you buy a house, you're like, I can't afford another $3,000 or $4,000, right? And that's fine. Maybe you wait a few months, but it's really important to get those things done because it's just going to pile up on each other. So if you don't get them then, and then you sell, pretty much those things might come back, and then there might be more because the damage has gotten worse or the water's gotten worse. So
It will come back, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah, we've had some where it's like, well, there's only 10 things and now there's 30 because you've switched over. So we definitely have to home inspection, so we can give you that one bid, which is really awesome. It helps the agent, I hope, Josh. But I feel like it helps
Yes, it
the
does.
agent, and then they can help negotiate. And then again, I know the timeline because Josh usually says, the agents we work with will say, hey, I need it by Tuesday because we have to negotiate this out. So I really try to be wary of that. Another thing we do too is we can also, if the seller agrees to do it, so the buyer says, yes, I want it done, and then the seller says, well, we'll just do it because she gave you the bid. We can also accept at closing the amount of money. Now, obviously, if it's a $20,000 thing, we probably won't, accept it at closing. And we do have a safe fall too, as if it doesn't close, we would still, be the seller's still liable. Another thing that we do too is we do remodeling. We do home remodeling. So, we do the before. If the seller needs us, we kind of do the middle part of it and the handyman. And then at the end, if the buyer comes along and says, hey, I bought the house, maybe I'm an investor and I want to redo the whole thing, or I want to renew this bathroom. So we do all that. And another thing that we have is a home maintenance program too. So we can come in every fall, every spring. It's kind of like a home warranty where we come in and do stuff for them. So we kind of have the whole gamut that we run to really help the seller and the buyer through the whole process.
Yeah, great. Well, Leslie, I know that is such a big part of it with the home inspections and all that. And part of then the thing that oftentimes falls through the cracks, and Jarrett Bragg with Shelter and Insurance, I'm looking at you, is that the home insurance. And one of the things I found out through not only what I do, but also personal experience in our neighborhood, a child got bit by a dog, and because the dog was not in the neighbor's yard, the homeowner's yard, the insurance covered it. But if the dog was in the home, it would not have covered it. So lots of things that need to be discussed when it comes to home ownership, umbrella insurance, all of that. And it can be very, very confusing, especially when everybody's dealing with punch lists and deadlines and all that. So Jarrett, tell us what are some things that we need to consider on the insurance side when we're covering our new home?
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Jarrett Bragg with Shelter Insurance. Todd brought up a good point. I heard a couple times mentioned if we're viewing the insurance part of the conversation through the lens of, hey, I'm going through the home buying process either as a multiple time home buyer or a first time home buyer. A home is potentially your biggest investment. I've heard that said a couple of times. If from my couple of minutes of talking, you only take one thing away, I would say take 30 minutes and don't just brush over the insurance part of this whole process. Take 30 minutes and sit down with your professional, or if you're interviewing potential options for the honor of working on your insurance, interview some, know what you're paying for, because this is most likely the biggest investment that a lot of folks will make. So don't brush over the part of that investment, the contract that you will sign up with through a company that protects that investment, right? So don't brush over that. What I was going to do is go through a couple of the parts of the home insurance, since we're talking about buying a home, and then give you a couple of takeaways at the end as far as maybe questions to ask your insurance provider when you're going through this process. But with your home or property insurance, it can really be broken down into three main parts. The first is physical damage coverage. This is, hey, I've had a hailstorm or wind or a fire or a pipe burst, and from that event, I have damage to my house or damage to my personal property. So within the physical damage category, there's two sections: the dwelling, which is your house, and then the personal property, which the way I explain it to my customers is if you cut the roof off of your house, flip it upside down and shake it. Nobody's ever going to do that, but it's a decent illustration. What falls out is probably covered under your personal property coverage. What stays is probably covered under your coverage a dwelling line. So that's the physical damage part of it. Todd, you very aptly brought up a potential liability claim. So liability coverage is the second piece of your home insurance, and potentially the most important part of your insurance plan. Home insurance, car insurance, everything. Liability is very, very important. Within the context of your home insurance, liability is somebody gets hurt on your property. Their injuries or damages are significant enough to where they're going to turn to you and ask you to compensate them for that. A lot of times there's lawsuits involved. So your liability protection is financial protection provided to you by the insurance company in the case that, in the context of your home insurance, somebody has gotten hurt on your property. That can be your dog bit somebody. That can be you have a trampoline and the neighbor's kid gets hurt on the trampoline. It can be a number of circumstances, but liability insurance is a coverage that, in my professional opinion, you really can't have too much of it, because if on the other end of the spectrum, if you find yourself without enough of it, what the courts are going to do, if you're ever in a situation where you're negligent, you're responsible for somebody else's injuries, and you don't have any or enough liability coverage, that other party is going to get compensated in some way, shape, or form. And that's going to come from liquidation of assets, which Todd and myself don't want, as well as potentially garnishment of future wages, which nobody wants that either. So liability coverage is very, very important. And then the third part of your home insurance that we're going to talk about is the part of additional living expenses. Now, a lot of times this can get brushed over if you're ever sitting down and doing a policy review or a coverage review with your insurance professional. Which, little side note, very important. I would recommend doing that with whoever your professional is once a year. But additional living expenses isn't talked about enough. Companies do this different ways. What it is basically is, if you have a claim at your house and it's big enough, it's the repair work or the rebuild is extensive enough, and you and your family can't live there while the repairs are going on, right? So your insurance companies will pay those expenses for you to live somewhere else until your house is ready for you to move back into. Now companies look at this coverage because companies do it different ways, right? Some companies will cut you off after a year. Some companies will cut you off after a certain dollar amount, $50,000 or $60,000. I would recommend going with a company that provides at least 2 years worth of coverage with no dollar limit. And why, here real quick, why is, what if it's a fire claim? If it's a fire claim, I'll just go ahead and tell you the investigation as to how that fire started will probably take 6 to 8 months. And that's before the rebuild process or the cleanup and rebuild even starts. So that coverage is very, very important. So physical damage, liability, and additional living expenses, those are the basics of the home insurance. And again, don't brush over this part of the home buying process. Sit down for 20, 30 minutes with a professional and go over these things and ask questions.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such a huge part of it, Jared, because I have seen people try to cut corners when it comes to insurance because, oh, it's more expensive. We didn't plan on this, and well, we can save some money on the insurance, and then when you need it, you find out there's a reason it was so much cheaper. So, good stuff on there. So I'm going to finish this out. My name is Todd Nelson. I'm with Edward Jones. I'm a certified financial planner. And one of the things that is important when you talk about the investment of a house is realizing you just don't go into buying a house just haphazardly. So one of the things that we've kind of skirted around or talked around, and a benchmark that we use from a certified financial planner standpoint is, can you afford that house? And of course, the mortgage company is the underwriter. They're the ones that determine, but a benchmark is typically around 28% of your gross income. If you want to make sure that your property, your insurance, your taxes, interest, all of that comes in around that 28% point. So when people come to me and say, can I afford a house? What I'm saying is, what I'm going to look at is, well, from a financial planning standpoint, doesn't make sense, because if you're looking to come in, get in a house and it's going to be 45% of your gross income, that's probably not the time for you to buy a house. And so the other thing that I want you to consider is, when it comes to an emergency fund, I highly, highly recommend, we're in the land of Dave Ramsey and all of that. And the emergency fund is a very, very smart thing to remember, and consider that if you have a two-income household, the benchmark is about 3 months of your income needs to be in an emergency fund. If you're a one-income household, you need it to be 6 months. But when you're buying a house, I highly, highly recommend that maybe you even double that to 6 to 12 months, simply because there's going to be all kinds of things that you did not foresee. And if you're squeaking into the house with little to no emergency fund, that's really going to put you in a bind down the road. So in my opinion, having your emergency fund in place is key, but then also reaching out. I'm not a tax professional, but I know enough about taxes to know that capital gains can the next year quickly become a deal breaker if you don't understand that there's certain exemptions that you can qualify for. Do not listen to TikTok about all you need to do is go out and buy a house, and then you never have to worry about capital gains. There is a lot that has changed. There's a lot that continues to change. And so remember that capital gains for a seller can be a real huge eye opener. And so you want to make sure when you're going into buying a house that you understand what capital gains and what taxes essentially that you may be looking at, and how you might be able to try to offset that during the purchase of a house. There are certain things that you can do, that if you've got some money sitting there for a month, say, because you're closing, you're moving across the country, whatever. Um, there are some things that you may want to look at where you can earn some higher interest. It's shorter term. Those are things that I can help locate, find out if it makes sense for you to do that, because you could easily get a couple $1,000s worth of interest while you're not tying that money up to buy a new home. So in the during process, in the in-between process, don't just write that off as, I'm going to put it in a savings account, because I guarantee your bank is out putting that money to use in the meantime. So the other thing after your there we go. Afterwards is, be smart with your money. If you have a profit and you know you don't have capital gains, don't go out and buy a new car. That's my opinion. Don't go out and buy a bunch of brand new furniture, all of those things, because do yourself a favor. Even if you have $50,000 and you say get a certain amount of return, go Google what 50% at, say, 7% times 30 years. Go Google what that turns into. And a lot of people, when they buy a house, they spend that 50,000 or the extra money just on stuff that they want. So lots of good stuff for us to continue to talk about. But in the meantime, what we want to do is just kind of wrap up. And I know that this is going to be seen after we record it. So what I want to do is take 10 seconds, and each person on the call, because I know we've kind of shot a fire hose at you with all this information. Why would somebody reach out to you in 10 seconds or less? All of the information is going to be in the show notes as far as how you can get in touch with each one of us. And I'm going to go based off of how I see you on the screen, not because you're who's my most favorite to least favorite. So Leslie Hayes, in 10 seconds, why would somebody reach out to you?
In Tennessee, it is not required that an attorney own or work at a title company. So just another difference between other states. So our office has 5 attorneys on staff. We're ready, like we're there, able to clear title, clear problems with files, which do come up. Almost every single file has at least one issue. So we're all available, ready to jump in and solve that so that you receive title to your property legally.
All right, perfect. And for me, if whoever would need to reach out to me, it's if you're wanting to say, okay, how does this fit into our overall financial plan? If you want to know what does this look like, can we afford some of those things, then that's why you want to reach out to me. Jarrett Bragg, why would folks on this call want to reach out to you?
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. So insurance in general is a transfer of risk. You're transferring the risk from the policy owner to the insurance company. There's no policy out there that covers everything. So the policy owner needs to be aware of what they're signing up for. And we pride ourselves in that. So we like no smoke, no mirrors. We like to be on the same page with our client, that we want them to know what they're paying for. So that's what we pride ourselves in.
Perfect. Heather Wilson, I think you're on mute, but why would somebody reach out to you? There we go.
Yeah, there's a lot of lenders out there. What I, the reason you should reach out to me is just I would provide a personal experience. You're going to have my cell phone. Real estate, as Josh and Leslie will tell you, it's not 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And I'm happy to help after hours. I might be at the baseball field with one of my sons watching a game. You might hear some cheering in the background, but I want to be there for my clients and just provide that personal experience.
Perfect. Josh Kile, round us out as a quarterback and mainly on these transactions. Why would somebody reach out to you?
Yeah, just to echo what Heather said, we all do this full time. This is our full time gig. We are seasoned in our professions. You're going to get white glove service. I work for myself. I'm a sole proprietor. There are a lot of real estate teams in Middle Tennessee, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to get someone who is very green when you go with a real estate team that's kind of walking alongside one of the most important financial decisions you've ever made in your life. So I would implore you to work with someone that is seasoned, has walked with hundreds of families over the last 9 to 10 years doing this, and that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of everyone here on the call, I want to thank you for joining this Zoom call. Again, all of our contact information is in the show notes. Please feel free to reach out. This is why we're putting this together, because we want you to know that there are folks in your corner that are here to educate you, bring value to your transaction, and to help you as you move along. So thanks everyone for joining us, and y'all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you guys.